24. So, beginning our Jaiva Dharma reading, and I'll return first. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine Nama Om Vishupadaya Gaura Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Srimad Bhakti Pragyana Keshaviti Namine Nama Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Namine Jai Shri Krishna Jai Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Gaura Hare Bol, Gaura Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. Jaya Jaya Guru. Jaya Nitai Gauranga 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 Jaya Nitai Gaura Hey 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 Oh Jaya Radha Madana Mohan Radha Madana Mohan Radhe Radha Madana Mohan Radha Madana Mohan Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Oh Radhe 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 Jai Shishi Guru Garanga Ganhavika Giridhari Radha Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai Brishabhananandini Vajeshwari Radharani Ki Jai Nityananda Rai Ki Jai Sri Satchinandana Gaudahari Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishi Machila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishi Machila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishi Machila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Jagat Guru Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotar Sarashishi Mad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Mahabhagavat Shila Gauri Kishodas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Saptam Goswami Shila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Jai Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Shila Baladevi Dibhushan Gaudi Vedanta Acharya Ki Jai Jai Shila Vishnath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai Jai Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Treya Ki Jai Jai Shila Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Ki Jai Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Shri Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadas Raghunath Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai Jai Swarup Damodar Rai Ramananda Gauda Parasada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Siga Holsi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Shri Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Antadweep Mayapur Simantadweep Gautandweep Madhyadweep Koladweep Richardweep Janadweep Modandweep Rudradweep Atmaka Navadweep Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Dwadasa Varmatvika Shri Brajamandal Ki Jai Radhakun Shamakun Ganga Jamuna Devi Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shri uh, Brinda Devi Maharani Ki Jai Yogamaya Purnamasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Ki Jai Ketra Mandal Ki Jai Sarva Vigna Vinashakari Shri Nrsingadev Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakta Prabha Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Achari Dham Ki Jai Achari Sampradaya Ki Jai Achari Acharya Ki Jai Akara Matraj Shri Chaitanya Mat Ki Jai Shri Keshav Ji Gaudiya Mat Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaud Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Aginati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Priya Surupe Dayata Surupe Prema Surupe Sahajabi Rupe Nijana Rupe Prabhueka Rupe Tatana Rupe Swabila Surupe Anapita Chirim Chirat Kuruna Vartino Kalo Samarpaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Tudikatamba Sudipita Sadahridare Kandare Spuratu Vasachinandanaha Yam Pravajantamanapetyam Apetykrityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Juhava Putre Titam Mayatayo Tarabo Binedustam Sarvabhutam Ridim Munimanatoshmi Bhaktiya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmarita Rangamadye Kripa Mayitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Baradram Tato Mamanasti Katyana Kapi Tavaivasmi Najivami Tvaivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotaras Rashishi Mad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotaras Rashishi Mad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada. And the same again unto Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidanandanamane Gauda Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Prayate, and all our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhavevicha patitanam pavnebhyo Vaishnave namo namaha. So coming to our Jaiva Dharma Mangalacharya and the Falshruti, and we're into the second set of 5 verses. Jade Dvaita Gyane Hoya Chita Upadaya Krishna
Krishna
Bhakti
Bhakti Chira
Chiradina
Dina
Upaya
Upaya
Upaya.
Upaya. Such knowledge, which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world, is fit to be rejected. Whereas transcendental knowledge of the divine duality within the spiritual world, Chit Jagat, should be accepted forever within one's heart, both as the Upai, the means of attainment, and the Upai, goal worthy of attainment.
This is exactly the topic that we're going to be studying in the 6th chapter. The Brahmins have come and they are dealing with the duality of this material world. Their caste is temporary. When they leave their bodies, they don't become a Brahmin somewhere else. They don't, the transcendental soul does not have a designation of being a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a Vaishnava or a Shudra. The transcendental soul is only Gopi Bharatu Kamalaya Das Dasanu Das. That's the identity of the spirit soul. So these Brahmanas, they've come to challenge the Vaishnavas on this particular point. And this verse is very much elucidating that. It's saying such knowledge, which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world, is fit to be rejected. So in chapter 3, it was called Naimitic Dharma should be relinquished. So we know in the past time, Devidas, he could listen to all the philosophy, hear from his father, Lahari Maharshai, hear so many truths from Vaishnava Das also, become inspired, but he couldn't climb over this enormous impression, sanskar, of his caste, his birth as a Brahmana, because it's monument. His whole life has been um, uh, surrounded by this understanding and mood of his caste as a Brahmana. All the time, people are acknowledging him as a Brahmana, and he is feeling that he is a Brahmana. So he hasn't begun to get off the mundane platform. So Vaishnava Das, he's going to be cutting away, chipping away through this 6th chapter at all the Brahmins, Abhiman of being Brahmanas, caste Brahmanas. And he does it so expertly, we'll see. Okay. Jiva Kabu Jadanai,
Hari
Hare
Kabunai,
Kabunai,
Hari
Hari
Sahajiva
Sahajiva
Chintya
Chintya Beda
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 Beda Mai.
Mai.
The Jiva is not a product of dull matter, nor is he Kevala Advaita, absolutely one in all ways with Sri Hari. The Jiva is inconceivably different and non different from Hari.
Yeah, he's not Advaitavad. This, if he's completely one in the sense of Advaitavad, this is also completely erroneous, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said. And it will lead one ultimately to Nirvishesh Gyan, which he also explains. These are profound truths. These are truths that the subtle consciousness will hold on to. We may have so much detachment from this world, etc., but unless we start to make inroads and being detached from our abhiman, our reputation, our material identity in this world, we read about Raghunath Das Goswami. My Gurudev is saying when he is in Antardesh is that he's seeing a spurti of Radha and Krishna in front of him, and he's performing activities in the Kunj directly to service to Sri Radhika as a manjari. And my Gurudev explains he doesn't even know the identity of Raghunath Das exists. That identity has gone completely. So, this is the transcendental state of consciousness that we want to aspire for. That I'm not sitting here, especially as we start to realize that sooner or later I'm really going to give up this material body. When I start to appreciate this fact significantly, I have to clear this misconception of my material identity, even as a male or a female, even in the male or female species, sex, that gender, that must be also purified because ultimately we are all of a female nature in the sense of that service to the Supreme. Krishna is the only Purush, and we are all that Prakriti, we are all that material energy that is serving that Supreme Purush. That's our actual identity. So these are significant truths. They can't just be climbed over in a moment or two. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's describing this in the um, different chapters. Some of the devotees, like Vaishnava Das, like Sannyasi Thakur, can very quickly capture this conception. But others, like Devi Das, are much more engrossed, and it takes them much, much, much more time to actually become freed from those shackles of the material designations and abhiman. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is beautifully delineating these truths, especially in this sixth chapter.
Deha
Deha
Kabu
kaba
Jivanai,
jivanai,
Dhara
dara
Bhogyanai,
bhogyanai,
Dhasya
dasa
Bhogya
bhogya
Jiva
jiva
Krishna
Krishna
Prabhu
Prabhu
Bhakta
Bhakta
Hai.
hai.
The material body should never be considered to be the Jiva. And this earth is not for the Jiva to exploit and enjoy.
That's basically what everyone is trying to do in the material world, one way or another. How can I make a nice arrangement for my living? And subtly, I'm thinking I'm so attached to this particular country or my countrymen, etc., my identity in a different country. This is all to be rejected ultimately.
The Jiva Swarup is Krishna Das and thus he is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. Whereas Sri Krishna Swarup is Prabhu, Master, and Bhokta, Enjoyer.
So, how can we come to this conception of embracing pure devotional service? Certainly, the path of Vaidhi Bhakti is not going to give us this realization. This path of Vaidhi Bhakti is like the practice, so to speak. I'm practicing the precepts to purify myself initially. But unless that practice turns into a direct desire to connect with that transcendental supreme personality, then all of my practice is useless. I can just take birth after birth after birth after birth. If I'm simply just chanting my rounds, going through the numbers, performing all of the apparent devotional activities, but without a mood to come to Krishna in affection. If I'm thinking of Krishna directly, then I'm thinking, what does Krishna like? What does Krishna want? the most. What does, and then my mind must go into the Astakalya Lila, because these are the pastimes that Krishna, these are the Nitya Lila of Krishna in the Astakalya Lila. These are everything else is Naimitic. Kamsa is Naimitic. Many of the demon pastimes, they're all Naimitic in the 10th canto. His birth is Naimitic. Krishna is never born. Na karmani ani hasya. He never takes birth. But he takes birth for the Leela in this world. So when the devotee genuinely wants to wake up his eternal relationship with the Lord, then his mind is naturally going to be attracted into the relish of Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, because that is what Krishna wants to do the most himself. To please Krishna, we must be focusing on the devotees and the gopis in particular. I'll place a very beautiful quote from the Madhya Lila 8 onto our WhatsApp text, and you can see Mahaprabhu is saying the same thing. This focusing on the gopis prem is the devotion that the sadhak wants to pick up. Jaiva Dharma nahi ache deha
Deha
dharma
Dharma
kata
Kata,
nahi
Nahiyache
ache
Jiva
jiva
Gyani
gyan maya
Mayavada
vada
Prata.
prata.
This book, entitled Jaiva Dharma, neither discusses matters related to the dead material body, nor does it propound the Mayavada doctrine of the Jiva's oneness with Brahm.
So very clear. It's neither about karma yoga or gyan yoga. Karma yoga is all pertaining to the body. Gyan yoga is focusing on nirvishesh Brahm, liberation. So these two witches need to be expelled from the heart. There's bhukti and mukti.
Jiva
Jiva
Nitya
nitya
Dharma
dharma
Bhakti
bhakti tahe
Tahe
jadanai,
Jadanai,
Shuddha
Shuddha
jiva
Jiva
prema
Prema
seva
Seva
phala
Phale Payatai.
payatai.
The Jiva's Nitya Dharma is Bhakti devoid of material motivation. The Jiv, the Jiva, uh, the Jiv purified by Seva attains the fruit of that Seva in the form of Prem.
What's that? A prihata um savai pum samparodharma yato bhaksir hosa. Ahoitiki apratihata. This freed from motivation is the um, teachings of this particular book, of this Jaiva Dharma. No motivation. Okay, so we come to page 96, and we, just to reiterate, so the Brahmins, the local caste Brahmanas, they've been inspired, and they're all very qualified Brahmanas in their respective positions as Brahmanas. This Chudamani, he's preached and delivered lectures all over India, and he's been given so many allocates, and he's an expert speaker. This Chudamani, the names are all very interesting. It's described in the study guide that we sent around. All the different names are analyzed. So they're all very qualified Brahmins, and they've come to challenge the simple hearted Vaishnavas who didn't want to challenge them, but then the Mahajans were being insulted, so to speak, by the Brahmins. So the Vaishnavas, they felt impelled to defend the honor of the Mahajans. So now they've come into the arena of this debate. And it's a beautiful arena. And I hope one day some artist will actually paint it. There's something like 200, 100 or so Vaishnavas and students have come to listen, and there's about 100 brahmanas on the other side. So it's a big assembly of about 300 people, and a glorious setting in Godram where Vaishnava Das will speak these beautiful truths to the Brahman questions. So we can start from the top of page 96.
No, we
No,
are, the last but one para. Vaishnava Das took the dust.
okay, yes. Yes, Lahari is explaining to the Vaishnavas that it was Devi Das's disturbed mind that brought all these brahmanas to challenge them because he couldn't um, climb over his identity as a Brahmin. And how could these Muslims come into the assembly of Brahmanas? This is why this debate has been ignited. So Vaishnav Das took the dust of Paramahamsa Babaji's feet on his head and said, I shall bear the order of the Vaishnavas upon my head. Today the knowledge that I have imbibed most certainly must certainly bear fruit. By this time the sky was clear. A broad sitting place was spread out in the Malati Madhavi grove, and the Brahmana Pandits sat on one side and the Vaishnavas on the other. All the Brahmanas and Pandits of Sri Godrum and Madhyadweep had been called there, and many neighboring students and scholarly Brahmanas also joined the assembly. So it was by no means a small gathering. About 100 Brahman Pandits were seated on one side and about 200 Vaishnavas on the other. So this was the description of the painting that one day will manifest. Vaishnava Das Babaji, calm and composed. Of course, he's calm and composed because he's going to have an opportunity to speak about Krishna. This is the greatest calming effect for the consciousness because when we're speaking about Krishna, it's the transcendental aspect of the that individual which is going to manifest in speaking Harikatha. It's the purpose, it's our function in life. Calm and composed, sat at the head of the assembly by the request of the Vaishnavas. Just then, an astonishing incident occurred. A cluster of malati flowers fell on Vaishnav Das's head from the vines above. This enlivened the Vaishnavas, inspiring them to utter the name of Hari loudly. This is to be understood as the mercy of Sriman Mahaprabhu, they declared. Of course, how wonderful. On the other side, Krishna Chudamani grimaced and said, grimaced means he scowled, he was unhappy, and said, you may think that, but flowers will not do. The tree shall be known by its fruit. So he's automatically showing an envious spirit, actually, and it's going to increase as we go through. Dismissing the matter, Vaishnava Das began. This meeting that is taking place in Navadvip today resembles the assemblies which take place in Varanasi, and this is a cause of great happiness for me. Although I am a resident of Bengal, I spent many years studying and lecturing in Varanasi and other places, so I am not so accustomed to speaking in Bengali. It is my request that in today's assembly the questions and answers be made in Sanskrit. Chudamani had studied the Shastra very, very diligently, but he could not speak Sanskrit fluently, apart from some shlokas that he had committed to memory. He was somewhat dismayed by Vaishnav Das's proposal and said, why, we are meeting in Bengal, so it is best to speak in Bengali. I cannot speak Sanskrit like the pundits of the western provinces. Everyone could understand, by observing their respective moods, that Chudamani was becoming fearful of debating with Vaishnava Das. From the very beginning, the flowers have fallen on Vaishnava's head, and he was unhappy to say that, and he responded in a negative way. And now he's becoming somewhat intimidated from the very. Why? Because he hasn't come to inquire about transcendental truth. He's come to challenge the transcendental truth. And because of that challenge, he must be defeated because the transcendental truth will hold true. But his envy will try to cover that over. Because envy and pride, we discussed yesterday, they're synonymous, pride and envy. If someone is proud of their learning, they are naturally envious of others who think they may be able to defeat them. So this is manifest, the two traits, the two qualities of pride and envy. Everyone could understand by observing their respective moods that Chudamani was becoming fearful of debating with Vaishnavadas. They all requested Vaishnavadas to speak in Bengali, and he agreed. Chudamani raised the first objection. This is how in assemblies you conduct it. There's first of all an objection, and then that has to be purified. If we read any Bhasya, the Govinda Bhasya, for example, it's all presented in the same way. There's first objection, and then there's purification of that objection or answer to that objection. Question and answer, in other words. So he's asking, is jati or caste nitya, invariable? Are the Hindus and Muslims not different castes? Do the Hindus not become fallen by associating with the Muslims? So we should understand historically, also in context, that previously the it's described that the Greeks invaded um, India prior to the Muslims, and they were actually called the Yavanas, but they were in a class of their own. The Yavanas, they were distinct, and then the Mughals, the Muslims, they invaded, and then the British Raj, they also invaded. So these are termed as Yavanas, these groups, because they're not Aryan, they're not originally Indian. So these are inferior groups of invaders and so on. So from that, for 10,000 years, historically, not 10,000 years, 5,000 years, historically, this mood has been that these inferior castes have actually come into India and have not supported India, but actually tried to take from India, to invade, to take goods. Alexander the Great was the one representing the Greeks. So they just tried to plunder. The Muslims, they actually lived here, but they also plundered the hearts of the Aryan people simultaneously. So Chudamani is asking this deep question about jati and caste. Vaishnava Das Babaji replied, according to the Nyaya Shastra, jati, a term that refers to race, caste, or species, is invariable. However, the term jati bhed, caste distinction, mentioned there does not refer to the difference of caste among human beings. Huh? Among human beings born in different countries. This term refers to the difference of species, such as that which is found between cows, goats, and human beings. So this jati is not to be applied to the human species, it's actually for the animal species, but they've twisted it and brought it around to the human species. Chudamani says, yes, what you say is quite true. So Chudamani understands the scripture and he has agreed with that. But does that mean that there is no jati bhed caste distinction between Hindus and Muslims? He wants to get to the root of this. Vaishnava Das said, yes, there is a distinction between the castes, but that type of jati is not eternal. This is the whole point through here, that he's trying to impress Chudamani on what is nitya and what is naimitic. This is the whole principle. Human beings have only one jati, which in this case means species. Within the human species, many different jati or castes have been invented according to time and tradition, etc., based on the different language, country, styles of dress, and skin color. These are all inventions, but it's not applicable to the Nitya Dharma of the soul. Chudamani, is there no difference in terms of birth? Or does the difference between Hindus and Muslims consist of nothing more than the difference in clothing and other such things? Because that's what Vaishnava suggested. Vaishnava does. Jivas are born into higher and lower varnas, castes, according to their previous karma, according to their previous karma. And in congruity with their varnas, they are eligible for different types of work, according to their karma. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are the four Varnas. All others are Antyaja, which means that they are low-born and outside the caste system. So for most of the Western followers here, we are all Antyaja, and we can take many lessons from this and not try to impose our desires to break social etiquette where it's considered, for example, in the Jagannath Puri Mandir, it's only Hindus who go in there. The devotees should never, ever, even in their dreams, object to this. We are in different bodies. We were born as Antyaja, but we have come off that bodily conception and we're practicing Vaishnavism. Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Haridas Thakur, they did not go into the Jagannath temple. So we are in very good company. This is the company that we have. Chudamani, are the Muslims not outcast? Vaishnava, yes, according to the Shastra, they are outside the jurisdiction of the four Varnas, Antyaja. They kill cows. Chudamani, then how can Muslims be Vaishnavas and how can respectable Vaishnavas associate with them? Beautiful questions. Vaishnava does. Vaishnavas are those who have pure bhakti, and all human beings are candidates for Vaishnava Dharma. Muslims are not eligible to perform the duties prescribed for the different varnas or the varnashram system because their birth disqualifies them. However, they have every right to participate in practices of bhakti, just like Haridas Thakur. One can never say that he knows the actual purport of the Shastras until he has minutely examined the subtle differences between Karmakand, Gyankand, and Bhaktikand. We've come to the same ladder, the same yoga ladder that was discussed in the second chapter, the third chapter, the fourth chapter, and now this chapter. This Karmakand, Gyankand, and Bhaktikand. Chudamani, very well. When one performs one's prescribed karma, the heart is gradually purified so that it becomes eligible for gyan. Amongst the gyanis, some are nirbhed Brahmavadis, who advocate the undifferentiated impersonal Brahm, while others are Vaishnavas who accept the personal form of Bhagavan, possessing transcendental attributes, Savisheshvad. Sa Vishesh. Vishesh means dress, and Sa means with, so with form. That's the etymology of that word. According to this progression, one cannot become a Vaishnav without first completing one's eligibility for karma. So he's going through the material stages as if it's all coming from birth. He's not seeing from the transcendental vision. Within first completing one's eligibility for karma, Muslims are not eligible even to perform the prescribed karma within the Varnashram system because they are outcasts. So, how can they become eligible for bhakti? Logical, very logical, rational questions. Vaishnavadas, outcast human beings have every right to practice bhakti. He's coming in very strongly here. This is his point. All the Shastras accept this, and Bhagavan himself has stated this in Srimad Bhagavatam 9:32.
Bhagavad Gita.
Sorry, Srimad Bhagavad Gita 9:32. You can.
मां हि पार्थ व्यासपश्रितया येऽपि शूयपापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यस्तथा शूद्रस्तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्.
O Parita, women, Vaishyas, Shudras, and low-born people who have taken birth in sinful families can attain the supreme destination by taking shelter of me. This is powerful praman. We should know where this is in our Jaiva Dharma so we can produce it when necessary. Here the word ashrita, taking shelter, refers to bhakti. This is corroborated in the Skanda Purana, Kashikand 2163.
ब्राह्मणक्षत्रियो वैश्यशूद्र वा यदि वेतारः विष्णुभक्तिः समायुक्तो जेन्यः सर्वोत्तमश्च सः.
Quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas 1006. Whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or an outcast, if he has taken shelter of Vishnu Bhakti, he is considered to be superior to all. Actually, this would be sufficient for Devidas if he had faith in the Shastra.
Chudamani.
No, but this, I'm thinking about Devidas because Devidas is watching this assembly and he was the one who was most disturbed at heart. He was the one responsible for this assembly actually happening. Chudamani's heart is going to be difficult to change because he's such an elevated Brahmana. How can he give up that status? But Devidas is possible. It is said in the Naradiya Purana,
स्वपचोऽपि महीपाल विष्णुभक्तो द्विजाधिकः विष्णुभक्तिविहीनो यो यतिश्च स्वपचाधिकः.
quoted from Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas 1087. Chudamani, you may give many quotations from Shastra as evidence, but it is important to see what is the underlying principle of this consideration. How can the defect of degraded birth be removed? Can a defect relating to one's birth be removed without taking another birth? Good question. Good question. Vaishnavadas. The defect of a degraded birth is the result of parabdha karma, previous activities that have begun to bear fruit in this life. And this parabdha karma can be destroyed by uttering the name of Bhagavan. The proof of this is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.16, 6.16.44.
यन्नाम सकृच श्रवन्त पुकासोऽपि विमुच्यते संसारात्.
Even a low-born dog-eater can be delivered from material existence simply by hearing your holy name once. So this is such nectar to listen to when Vaishnava Das is responding in such a shastric manner to these allegations. It is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 6.2.46. Go ahead.
नातः परं कर्म निबन्धकृतानां मुमुक्षतं तीतपादानुकीर्तनात् न यत् पुण्यकर्मसु सजते मनो रजस्तमोभ्यः कलिलं ततो नायतः.
Those who desire liberation from the bondage of material existence have no means of rooting out sin except by the chanting of the holy names of Bhagavan, who sanctifies even the holy places by the mere touch of his lotus feet. The reason is that when one performs Nam Sankirtan, the mind does not become attached to karma again. Whereas when one practices any other means of atonement, the mind is again contaminated by the material qualities of passion and ignorance, since the tendencies to commit sin have not been destroyed at the root. So, this is a verse from the Ajamil Charita.
Hmm.
So, this whole pastime in the sixth canto of Ajamil is demonstrating this. Ajamil was the most sinful wretch, but because he called Narayan, calling even his son at the time of his leaving the body, the three Vishnu Dutas arrived. There was four Yamadutas because um no, there was three Yamadutas, I'm sorry, because mind, body, and words were all degraded in the form of Ajamil. So three Yamadutas appeared. And four Vishnu Dutas appeared because there are four syllables in the name Narayana. So because of those four syllables, then four Vishnu Dutas appeared. So that's a perfect example to um, explain this point that Vaishnava Das is um, offering here. Again, in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-7, it is stated,
अहोवत स्वपचोतो गरीयान् यज् जावाग्रे वर्तते नाम तुभ्यं तेपस्तापश्चु जुहु सहस्नुर् आर्य ब्रह्मणाचुर्नाम गृणन्ति एते.
so this verse I think is spoken by Kapila Dev to his mother, Devahuti. Oh, what more can be said about the greatness of a person who chants the holy name of Sri Hari? A person whose tongue utters your holy names is superior to all, even if he has taken birth in a family of dog eaters. His Brahminical status has already been established in his previous birth. Those fortunate jivas who chant the Sri Harinam, who chant Sri Harinam, have already undergone austerities, performed fire sacrifices, bathed in the holy places, followed the rules of proper conduct, and thoroughly studied the Vedas. So these facts, when the Antyajas or the Westerners, for example, are hearing these, they should never become proud, thinking, oh, yes, I was a Brahmin in my previous life. This is why I'm actually chanting Hare Krishna, and have the misconception that now they have socially become Brahmanas. They haven't externally become Brahmanas at all. They are always Antyaja. They are always of that lower caste. So this should give impetus for humility in the Antyajas. If the Antyaja actually comes to the path of Kirtanya Sadhari by his humility, then he can be honored properly as a Vaishnava. But if that humility hasn't manifested, then he's still considered to be an Antyaja. So it's this humility which will be the telling distinction, just like with Rupa Goswami, was born actually in such a high class South Indian Brahmin family, and Sanatan also. But they both stayed at the Siddha Bakul with Haridas Thakur, and they didn't try to enter into the Jagannath temple. And the same with Haridas Thakur. He's the Namacharya. Did he ever think that he had some right to enter into the Jagannath temple? He felt it, the whole, his whole life, his whole mood was demonstrating abject humility, and Rupa and Sanatan the same. So for us who are outside of the Varnashram system as Antyaja socially, not as Vaishnavas, Vaishnavas, we are Jiva Sarupoi Krishna, we are on that platform. Or if we're practicing, we're on that platform as pure Vaishnavas. But in our social condition, we are not, which will be explained through here. Chudamani. Then why is it that a Chandala who chants Hari Nam is barred from performing yagyas and other Brahminical activities? Vaishnavadas. One must take birth in a Brahmin family to perform yagyas and other such activities, and even one who was born in a Brahmin family must be purified by the ceremony of investiture with the sacred thread before he is eligible to perform the duties of a Brahmana. In other words, he has to be
Hmm.
purified as a Brahmana. Similarly, a Chandala may become purified by taking up Harinam, but he is still not eligible to perform yagyas until he acquires seminal birth in a Brahmana family. However, he can perform the angas, limbs of bhakti, which are infinitely greater than yagyas. Our purpose is to reach to Krishna. Our object is not to make some um, activist kind of mission in this world as far as the caste system is concerned. That's not our objective at all. Our objective is internally to connect with the Supreme Lord, my spirit soul to connect with the Supreme Spirit. That's my objective. So whether or not I'm regarded as a Brahmin is immaterial. But I should think for my own progress in bhakti that I am not sufficiently qualified for that. That will give me the impetus to remain in a more humble condition, because this humility actually is the very post, the pillar for the bhakti lata. The bhakti lata bij is bestowed by Guru, that Krishna seva vasana, that desire to serve Krishna. And that creeper has to grow on a pillar. We see all creepers, they don't run on the ground, they grow on a pillar to go higher. So that pillar is Trinadapi Sunichena. That's the pillar of this creeper, of this bhakti lata. So it's growing on that pillar. So if I'm given the opportunity in this life to constantly take the humble position, I should welcome that and embrace it, and never try to think, oh, I'm going to show all these people that I'm not like a fallen Western devotee or something like that, that actually I'm completely submissive, because otherwise you'll never be accepted in Vaishnava circles. Similarly, a Chandala may have become purified by taking up Harinam, but he is still not eligible to perform yagyas until he acquires seminal birth as in a Brahmin family. However, he can perform the angas, limbs of bhakti, which are infinitely greater than yagyas. Yes, the angas of bhakti are connecting with that transcendental object. Chudamani, what kind of conclusion is that? How can a person who is disqualified from an ordinary privilege be qualified for something which is much higher? He can't grasp the distinction between Naimitic and Nitya. He hasn't begun. Is there any conclusive evidence for this? Vaishnava does. There are two types of human activities: material activities that relate to practical existence, vyavaharik, and spiritual activities that relate to the ultimate truth, paramatik. A person may have attained spiritual qualification, but he does not necessarily qualify him for particular material activities. For example, one who is a Muslim by birth may have acquired the nature and all the qualities of a Brahmana, so that he is a Brahmana from the spiritual point of view, but he still remains ineligible for certain material activities, such as marrying the daughter of a Brahmana. He cannot transgress the material social etiquette. It just creates chaos. This etiquette is there for a purpose, and it's a bastion. It's a strong fortress. This Varnashram system was manifested by Krishna himself. It helps if it's guided in the direct uh, focus to achieve pure bhakti. If it's guided in that direction, it can be very supportive. But if it's only exploited by those smarter castes, then it's going to have a negative impact. Chudamani, why is that? What is wrong if he does so? So Chudamani knows this, but he's just wanting to hear Vaishnavadas. Vaishnavadas, if one violates social customs, one is guilty of Vyadikari dosh, Vyavaharika dosh, secular impropriety. The members of society who take pride in their social respectability do not condone such activities. That is why one should not perform them, even if he is spiritually qualified. Just remain humble like Rupa Goswami, like Haridas Thakur. There's no need to make a big drama about your apparent spiritual qualification. Chudamani, please tell me what is the cause of eligibility for karma and what is the cause of eligibility for bhakti. Vaishnavadas, tat tat karma yogya svabhav janma. Nature, birth, and other such vyavaharic or practical causes that make one suitable for a particular type of work are the sources of eligibility for karma. The source of eligibility for bhakti is tattvika shraddha, faith that is rooted in the absolute truth. These are two distinct paths. The vyavaharic, which is all about the practical, material realm and material karma, and there's the paramatic or the tattvik shraddha, which pertains to the absolute reality. Wonderful conversation. Chudamani, don't try to intimidate me with the language of Vedanta. Explain clearly what you mean by tat tat karma yogya swabhav. Vaishnavadas. The qualities that are found in the nature of a Brahmana are control of the senses, shama, control of the mind, dham, austerity, tapa, purity, socha, satisfaction, shantosh, forgiveness, shama, simplicity, sarlata, devotion to Bhagavan, isha bhakti, mercy, daya, and truthfulness, satya. The natural qualities of a Kshatriya are prowess, teja, physical strength, bala, resoluteness, driti, heroism, surya, tolerance, titiksha, magnanimity, udarata, perseverance, udyama, gravity, dishrata, dhirata, devotion to the brahmanas, brahmyata, and opulence, aishwarya. The qualities that characterize the Vaishnavas are theism, astikya, charity, dan, faith, nishta, absence of pride, adambikata, adambikata, and eagerness to accumulate wealth. Artha Trishna described the Vaishnavas have an insatiable greed for wealth, hunger for wealth. The natural qualities of a Shudra are service to the Brahmins, cows, and celestial deities, Dvija Godeva Seva, and satisfaction with whatever is obtained, Yata Labha Santosh. The qualities in the nature of an Antyaja outcast are uncleanliness, asochiam, dishonesty, mritya, thievery, chorya, atheism, nastika, nashtikata. futile quarreling, vrita kala, lust, calm, anger, krodha, and hankering to satisfy one's senses, indriya, trishna. So these are the qualities generally in the Antyaja nations. We can see their insatiable greed and their transgression of all moral etiquette across the board is how they behave. This is a fact of life that we have witnessed. The Shastras prescribe that one varna should be determined according to these different natures. The determination of varna on the basis of birth alone is a recent practice. An individual's inclination for a specific type of work and his expertise in it are both related to these natures. A person's nature gives rise to his inclination and taste for particular activities, and it is this particular nature, swabhav, that is known as the nature according to the specific type of work, tat tat karma yogya swabhav. So it's one's nature. Swabhav means nature. In some cases, birth is the prominent factor in ascertaining a person's nature, and in other cases, association is the primary factor. We see this very practically. Someone in the Western world, their father may be a priest, and their son may be a total drug addict, completely, or a thief, a dacoit. And in the Brahmin caste, it can be the same. They can be a total debauchee. So this doesn't qualify them for that status of Brahmana or priestlyhood in the um, Antioch case. Nature is formed by association, which begins from birth. So birth is certainly one cause that determines the development of nature. Indeed, nature develops from the moment of birth, but that does not mean that birth is the only cause of nature and eligibility for a particular type of work. It is a great mistake to think like this, for there are many other causes. Therefore, the Shastras prescribe that one must study a person's nature when one assesses eligibility for work. We see in the form of the demon Kamsa. He was actually born in a saintly family, Ugrasen, Padmavati, even though she was impregnated by a demon. Nevertheless, he was born into a family of Raja Rishis, saintly kings, Ugrasen. But his nature was completely different to that. So his nature prevailed, not the association. Chudamani, what is meant by Tattvika Shraddha, faith in the absolute truth? Vaishnavadas, Tattvik Shraddha is pure-hearted faith in Bhagavan, which gives rise to a spontaneous attempt to attain him. A Tattvik Shraddha, unreal faith, is that which is based on an erroneous conception of Bhagavan, which arises in an impure heart on seeing worldly activities, and which gives rise to self-interested endeavors rooted in pride, prestige, and worldly desires. These are the principal um, enemies that will influence the consciousness away from their true nature, this pride, prestige, and worldly desires. Some Mahajans have described Tattvika Shraddha as Shastriya Shraddha, faith in the Shastras. It is this Tattvika Shraddha that is the cause of eligibility for bhakti. Faith in the Shastra will give rise for bhakti. If we have faith in the Shastra and all the places that it's leading, then the wayward mind and the wayward desires will be purified. My Gurudev often says it seems like the mind and all his desires are on one side and Radha and Krishna are on the other side. So we have this dichotomy, we can say, between the two worlds. But if we have rock solid faith, particularly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if our faith can be inspired in that particular scripture from the very beginning of our journey as devotees, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and of course this Jaiva Dharma. As we're going through now, we're appreciating the depth of the truths that are being exposed here on the pages. This is not just referring to the Brahman caste, it's referring to our very intrinsic material identity. If we're identifying with our nature and reputation in this material world, that's not our Nitya Dharma. That is nimitic. Whatever your situation is in this material world is not Nitya. So we have to relate to our pure paramatic nature to fully let Bhakti Devi flourish in our hearts. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. It's an hour. I don't do more than an hour because I think that's enough to digest. There's many, many truths that we've just walked over today, and more truths will come for tomorrow. So we'll begin with a fresh approach for tomorrow. Okay, Jaiva Dharma Ki Jai. We'll stop on this page 104. Actually, I just want to read this last question. Chudamani, let us admit that some people have developed faith in the Shastras, although their natures are not elevated. Are such people also elevated for bhakti? So this is the question that we're going to answer tomorrow. All good questions coming from Chudamani. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is crafting this, just like in his Jiva Tattva in chapter 16. He's hearing the heart of the conditioned soul. What are their real objections? And let them bring them out and let us purify them with Shastra. So these questions that are coming from Chudamani are very pertinent for our advancement and our understanding of what is Shuddha Bhakti and what is karma and what is gyan and what is vyavaharik, what is practical and what is paramatic. So these are all powerful teachings. So Jaiva Dharma Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gauda Premanandi, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Jaiva Dharma Ki Jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Gauda Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyacha, Patitanam Papnibhyo Vaishnave Namo Namaha.